I try to take stock in the fact that we do have the most divided Congress basically we've ever had in our history, almost as evenly split as it could be in the House and the Senate. And for somebody like Kamala Harris, who is the deciding vote, the tiebreaker in the Senate, she has an enormous amount of responsibility. And I think and I hope that she will weigh that responsibly because it's going to be on her shoulders. You know, they're talking about eliminating the Electoral College now. That's their big thing. And does she really want that on their record? You know, eliminating all the history and all the positive things that has done to thwart the tyranny of the masses, the things that could have, you know, if it weren't for the Electoral College, slavery would have existed probably much longer, Dave.
Isn't that actually the cool part, that it's like there are all these networks popping up, you know, right-leaning or conservative-leaning networks, and I don't sense that, although obviously at some level there's competition, there's only so many ad dollars to go around or whatever it might be, but it's like there's The Blaze, there's Daily Wire, there's Newsmax, there's more and more, there's independent guys, there's the whole thing, and it's like everyone's kind of helping everybody. I go on everybody's shows, I'm happy to promote everybody, and it's like, man, we just need more and more. If I find a new voice that's good, I'm like, man, come with me. Right, come with me on this adventure.
I'm with you 100%, Dave, and the way I kind of look at this, and forgive me because I have some Southeastern Conference bias here. You know, congratulations to Alabama and everything. I'm a Georgia grad, but I consider conservative media almost like the SEC, like the elite of the media. And, you know, you may be Alabama and I'm Georgia here, but when it comes, we might compete in our league. But when the time is right, when it really matters, like on election night, you know, we're going to be in position to really have the best ideas because we compete with our ideas. And I think, you know, in the long term, you know, you ask, you know, people of a certain age are more conservatives, you know, at the later end of your lifespan than the younger folks. It's because conservative ideas eventually do win out over time. When you have the advantage of perspective and longevity and history to look back on, you realize that the things that got us here to where we are as a country have worked. And most of those things, whether it's federalism or, you know, checks and balances, those kind of old school ideas, it's really conservatives that have continued to talk about those things and really defend those principles throughout history.
And it's very exciting because we have those things for another 7 days.
Well, I honestly think, I mean, this is scary for a lot of folks here, but I'm reminded of many times in history when we've talked about how bad things could be. I try to take stock in the fact that we do have the most divided Congress basically we've ever had in our history, almost as evenly split as it could be in the House and the Senate. And for somebody like Kamala Harris, who is the deciding vote, the tiebreaker in the Senate, she has an enormous amount of responsibility. And I think and I hope that she will weigh that responsibly because it's going to be on her shoulders. You know, they're talking about eliminating the Electoral College now. That's their big thing. And does she really want that on their record? You know, eliminating all the history and all the positive things that has done to thwart the tyranny of the masses, the things that could have, you know, if it weren't for the Electoral College, slavery would have existed probably much longer, Dave. So these are the things they want to tear down. We know it's kind of symbolic at this point. And I'm really hopeful, while at the same time skeptical, that they actually want to do this stuff because they know, based on what happened, like, you know, the Supreme Court, for example, that there are unintended consequences, and it usually comes back to bite them in the ass.
Yeah, listen, I hope you're right. I do hope you're right, but I actually think they want to do absolutely everything that they say they want to do, and the Electoral College stuff, the pack in the court stuff, whether it's post-impeachment of Trump, like just whatever crazy bananas thing someone puts up there, I think they want to do all of it. Do you see any reason to think, is there anything in the movement right now that comes up as like a roadblock for you, that they're like, oh, well, maybe they'll turn around now? I mean, they are seeing the cliff over there. I mean, maybe this one, you think?
Well, I had hoped so. I had Mark Halpern on my show today, you know, kind of looking at the public opinion polling available on this impeachment issue is pretty weak right now, but there are polls out there that showed us the same thing as it showed us last time when they were talking about impeachment. The country's evenly divided on this. You know, and I still believe in the collective, you know, kind of power of the individual, of course, but, you know, the American public, too. And there were a lot of promises made about $2,000 stimulus checks from the Democrats, especially those who recently won those seats in Georgia. And if they fail to deliver on that, you know, I think there's going to be enormous blowback from this country, again, because they're being disingenuous about their true motives. And the American public is a lot smarter than I think Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris give them credit for. And again, that's why I'm optimistic still at the end of the day, Dave, is because we still have, 75 million people in this country who appear, sane. And you know which side I'm talking about, which voted. And again, I don't want to pretend like I'm a partisan here, but when you look at the comparison, it's a stark contrast, and it's hard for me to see how people went the other way sometimes. But again, that's just my opinion. I guess I can say that here in this forum.
No, well, I'm curious though, how do you balance that on a day-to-day basis? Like when I do your show, it's pretty obvious to me that you are a professional newsman. Do you consider yourself a traditional journalist still?
No,
because it's obvious to me that you have opinions and you're not afraid to say them, but you are presenting news.
I think there's almost an expectation now from the audience not to give your opinion, but to be honest about where you're coming from. And I always talk about this isn't not necessarily my opinion, it's more or less my perspective, giving people some insight on where I'm coming from. I grew up in the Deep South, but my parents are from the Northeast. I consider myself a first generation Southerner. Even growing up in the 80s and 90s, Catholic in the Deep South with Northern parents, you'd have friends and they'd be somewhat skeptical of, are you a carpetbag? What's going on here? That type of thing. But again, it's a diverse kind of background to have and a different way of thinking at things. And that's kind of just always shaped my perspectives. But, people expect you to kind of be honest with them where you're coming from on these things. So I like to say I do two things here. I'm going to lay out the facts for you, and then I'm going to tell you why, specifically, we chose those set of facts, because I have a limited time for my show, so there are only so many facts I can provide in there, and there are other news outlets that focus on other facts, but these are the facts that I think are the most important facts, and those facts come, based on my history, where I grew up, what I believe, the books I'm reading, the movies I'm watching. And so I do try to give the audience insight on those things so they have kind of perspective on where my perspective is coming from. And that, I talk about this with my college journalism professor all the time, David Hazinski, who used to work at NBC News. He is admittedly a liberal, and we argue about politics all the time. But when it comes to the practice of journalism, the rules are still the same at the end of the day. Trust your sources, give attribution to where your information comes from. Only choose sources that are really trustworthy. Tell people the truth, what has happened. And don't speculate too much, and you stay within those lines. It's not hard. It is hard. It's difficult, but you can do both, Dave. Give people the facts. Be honest with them about what's going to happen. Don't be afraid to call him the president-elect when you know it's going to upset the audience, because they might be upset with you for a day or two, and some people might change the channel. But come January 20th, when I was honest with the audience about what, historically and constitutionally the limits were for what actually were going to happen, and that Linwood might not be right. Long term, when you are right, they gravitate back towards you and they respect you for being honest with them. And that's what you're able to do with your audience. That is what I hope the internet still provides. You're still on YouTube. Thank God for that. I think you're about to cross 1.5 million followers on YouTube, and YouTube would be nuts to take that platform away from you, because it would really upset or piss off, I can say, 1.5 million people. So, just like I have faith in the overall population of the country, I have faith in those 1.5 million people who follow you on YouTube, and that they would pick up the phone or do something to force YouTube to make sure that you still have this platform.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about the media instead of nonstop yelling, check out our media playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out the full episode playlist. They're both right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.